Everything is not as it seems. It is time to wake up.
Forget the headlines. Forget the rhetoric. We're looking at the DNA. Donald Trump says he's a student of history, but his own family tree is a map of the 20th century's darkest chapters. While the Trumps in New York were building an empire, their blood relatives in Germany were picking up rifles for the Wehrmacht of Nazi Germany. We've pulled the unit numbers. We've tracked the movements. We've found the graves. Today, we strip away the Swedish myth and look at the Nazi soldiers who shared his blood. Part 1. The Swedish Lie. For decades, the truth of the Trump bloodline was buried beneath a carefully constructed lie, a Swedish lie. Here is why Donald's dad, Fred Trump, and Donald's mom, Marianne McLeod Trump, kept the secret locked away. Donald's dad, Fred, spent his entire career telling the world he was Swedish. He even told his own kids they were from Karlstad, Sweden. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated move to protect his real estate empire in New York, where many of his tenants and Jewish business partners were reeling from the horrors of World War II. Donald's dad knew that being German in post-war America was a death sentence for a developer. He famously said, "You couldn't sell apartments to Jewish clients if they knew you were German." So, he simply deleted Germany from the family tree. What was Donald's mother's role in this? While Donald's mom was actually an immigrant from Scotland, she went along with the Swedish story for years to present a united front. The family brand depended on being seen as neutral Scandinavians rather than Germans. The secret also hid a scandal involving Donald's grandfather, Friedrich, who fled Germany at 16 to evade mandatory military service for financial opportunity in the USA. He amassed a fortune during the Klondike Gold Rush by operating the Arctic Restaurant and Hotel, an establishment notorious for profiting from alcohol and sex work. However, his attempt to repatriate in 1905 backfired when the government denounced him as a draft dodger. In a move that changed the course of history, the government issued a royal decree banishing him forever and stripped him of his citizenship. Forced back to New York while his wife was pregnant with Donald's father. Fred Friedrich left behind a scandal the family would bury for decades by falsely claiming they were of Swedish descent. Donald Trump himself kept this lie going for years, even writing in his 1987 book The Art of the Deal that his family came from Sweden. It wasn't until the late 80s that the truth finally leaked out. Part 2. Bloodlines of the Third Reich. Donald Trump's Nazi cousins. While the Trump family were being raised in a Queens mansion, Donald Trump's cousins, Ernst Christ and Edward Freund, were deep in the machinery of the Third Reich. These weren't just distant names. They were his direct descendants of the same small village in Karlstad, Germany. Ernst Christ, corporal of the anti-tank unit. Ernst Christ was Donald Trump's first cousin. He was the son of Johannes Christ, who was the brother of Donald's grandmother, Elizabeth Christ. He served as an Unteroffizier corporal in the first company of Panzerabteilung 670. This was an elite anti-tank unit that operated independently to support various infantry divisions. Ernst Christ participated in the 1940 Blitzkrieg invasions of Belgium and France. His unit was later deployed to the Eastern Front for Operation Barbarossa, the massive invasion of the Soviet Union. In July 1942, his company occupied the town of Polodevitoy, south of Stalingrad. According to the Holocaust Research Center Yad Vashem, while his unit was present, Nazi soldiers rounded up approximately 100 Jewish families. These victims were loaded onto trucks under the guise of repatriation, but were instead taken to a nearby ravine and executed. Edward Freund, Nazi Security Battalion soldier. Edward Freund was the son of Donald Trump's great-aunt, Elisabetha Trump, making him a first cousin. Edward Freund served in Security Battalion 790, a specialized unit within the Nazi military machine designed specifically for rear area security. These battalions were not frontline combat troops. Instead, their job was to clean up the areas the Nazis had already taken over. In practice, Freund's unit operated as the primary enforcement arm for the SS and Einsatzgruppen mobile killing squads. while the Einsatzgruppen carried out the actual shootings. Security battalions like Freunds provided the inner barrier, physically surrounding Jewish ghettos and villages to prevent any escape. They were responsible for the logistics of mass murder, rounding up civilians, guarding them at execution pits, and conducting cleansing sweeps to hunt down survivors. This was a war of extermination where Freund's job was to systematically eliminate partisans and Jewish populations to ensure the absolute ideological and racial purity of the territory behind Nazi lines. To conclude, while Donald Trump's cousins were in Europe doing the Nazis' dirty work, Fred Trump was busy pulling off a massive cover-up in New York. For 40 years, he systematically erased the family's German identity, forcing a fake story on everyone, including his own kids, that they were actually Swedish. This wasn't just some small family secret. It was a calculated move to protect the Trump money. Fred Trump knew that if his Jewish tenants in Queens and Brooklyn found out his family was linked to the very people currently carrying out the Holocaust, his real estate empire would have collapsed overnight. He scrubbed the Nazi-era bloodline from the record because admitting where they really came from would have been a death sentence for their American business interests. He traded the truth for a manufactured heritage just to keep the checks rolling in.
Everything is not as it seems. It is time to wake up.